taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5, high buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5, high buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. We the ones they are. The ones they can't skip. Fighting for respect, it's a tough road ahead. But we pack that heart and we never dread. Late hits and big plays, we bring in the heat. Watch out for the G5, we can't be beat. From the MAC to the Sun Belt, we don't back down. In this football jungle, we wear the crown. All the doubt is sleeping, but we making noise. In the G5 Hive, we the realest boys. When the clock's ticking down, we the ones to believe. One play, one chance, we gon' make them achieve. From the sidelines to the end zone, hear that roar. In the G5 Hive, we always wanting more. We in the G5 Hive, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. So raise your flags high, let them wave in the air. In the G5 Hive, we the squad that's rare. With heart and grit, we rewriting the script. In the world of college football, we the ones they can't skip. Yeah. Yeah. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5, high buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. Yo, it's game day, stadium packed, feel that rush. From Boise to App State, man, we never hush. Rocking the colors, yeah, we bleed that pride. Cinderella stories, watch our dreams collide. Late nights, bright lights, we grind every play. Underrated talent, we gon' make them say, who's that team when we come to town? Representing for the schools that wear the crown. We in the G5 high, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking shots, we alive. From the mountains to the coast, we gon' bring that fire. In the heart of college football, we the ones they admire. We the ones they are. The ones they can't skip. Fighting for respect, it's a tough road ahead. But we pack that heart and we never dread. Late hits and big plays, we bring in the heat. Watch out for the G5, we can't be beat. From the MAC to the Sun Belt, we don't back down. In this football jungle, we wear the crown. All the doubt is sleeping, but we make making noise. In the G5 Hive, we the realest boys. When the clock's ticking down, we the ones that believe. One play, one chance, we gon' make them achieve. From the sidelines to the end zone, hear that roar. In the G5 Hive, we always wanting more. We in the G5 Hive, buzzing loud, we thrive. Underdogs rising up, taking
forward, gets out of a tackle, now turns on the Jets, up to the 30, the 20, 10, 5, Torrey Horton back to the end zone.
48-yard play, guess who? Body, up the middle, making another move, to the outside, 15, 10, end zone again.
Keeps it, nice move by Brown, he's got space, he's got 6. 35-yard touchdown for Byron Brown, a record-setting night for the South Florida quarterback.
Down so far, a little bit of a high snap. Genty right up the middle. Genty has room. Ashton Genty, give him 6.
Second and long. Lagar tries to fit it in. Runnels, it does. Runnels stays up. The Sharks offense 4-3 wheels. Incredible effort for Runnels.
The G5 Hive. All G5, all the time.
Welcome to the G5 Hive Live, where we are excited to bring you the G5 college football coverage you love each and every week. I am Luke, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justice. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're watching us on X, please give us a follow, a like, and a retweet. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review. The G5 Hive merchandise store is now live. Link in the YouTube comments as well as pinned on our X page and here at the bottom of the screen. Justice. We got college playoffs. Not a lot, kind of, it feels like a dead period kind of for us. We've pretty much, this will be the last show that we kind of have like content that was like kind of pre-made for us, where we, in the season, it's like, obviously you're just going to talk about the last week and the coming week. And then, this is the last episode. We're kind of wrapping up like the all G5 Hive teams and that we put together. And we got a couple exciting things coming before our, we got Hawaii kicking off spring practice here. I think that might be in the news and notes or at some point, yeah. But they'll be kicking that off here in February, and then it's into like, all right, we gotta make our own content. Obviously the transfer portal, we could probably just take however long we want on that because there's plenty of some head coaching changes. We'll do something similar, that we did last year. We're looking at a couple of head coaches or OC hires that really intrigue us, but for the first time, I think all season, I wasn't doing a whole bunch of prep work all week or this or that. It was like, all right, wow, this is kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Now I'm like, all right, next Monday the 20th, we'll have the national championship game. It's like, all right, well, no.
Yeah, the season's over. Sadly. And NFL playoffs, got college football playoffs. No G5 team in the championship game, sadly. But
yeah.
We got independent, right? We got Notre Dame, so they're not G5, but they are an independent.
But how's everything else going for you?
Cold, man. Good, man. We got some snow last week, which is very unusual for us. I don't know. Maybe we got like an inch or two. But then when I woke up, we got it Friday night. When I woke up Saturday morning and went outside, it was just a slushy, sloppy mess. It wasn't it was just really, really wet.
So for those who are listening and watching, I live in Iowa, Justice in Virginia. And he was talking about the snow coming. I just forget that there are people that live across the United States that don't experience the same thing I do. I've got this nice riding lawnmower that's got a huge snowblower attachment with like hydraulics and stuff. And just like, yeah, don't really own a snow shovel. We don't like need that. I was like,
I don't own a snow shovel either, so we don't get snow enough, man. Like, it feels like when I was a kid, we got it a couple times a year. But
global warming, Justice, global warming.
But now we don't we don't get it very much at all. And obviously not equipped for it here. Like, if we got like, I don't know, a blizzard and got like, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches, man, stuff would shut down for days. Because like they don't plow. Well, they only plow like a very select few main roads. Like, getting out of your neighborhoods, you're on your own. They ain't never plowing that. Yeah, school. I mean, I remember, oh gosh, I must have been a senior. I feel like we didn't go to school for a whole week because there was so much snow and ice on the ground.
So
my kids have never experienced that. They've had maybe like 2-3 days tops, but that's about it.
So when I was younger, I lived in Michigan, out of school and stuff, my first job, and I lived in this like snow belt. So I lived in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and I worked in Mattawan, Michigan, and there was a snow belt or weather belt. I don't know what it was, but it was on I-94. And it was like, I called into work because I couldn't get out of my apartment complex. It was so much snow with that lake effect. Like, it would like, there was no like rain for a little bit of time. It was like rain all day, snow all day, whatever. And I called into work. I was like, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it in. They're like, okay. And then like I get a call back at like 10 o'clock. And they're like, so are you coming in or not? And I'm like, I already called in. Like, I can't make it. Well, this like nice like weather belt, snow belt, like they were unaffected. Like, they had no snow. And I had so much snow that I couldn't get out of my apartment complex because it wasn't plowed. They thought I was lying. And this was before like FaceTime and all that stuff. I had to take pictures and like send it in. And they're like, oh, okay. And it was just like this weird thing. Like, there would be times where it's bright and sunny, and then I would hit this certain spot and it's like a downpour. It was nuts. I've never, a wild experience.
Yeah, my wife's family's from Buffalo. And she went up there this past Thanksgiving. And like where she rented her Airbnb was like, I don't know, 20-30 minutes like southeast, I guess, of where her family lives. And where she was staying, like, there was some snow, but like you could still see grass blades sticking out. And like at her where her family was lived, there were feet of snow because of the lake effect there. So yeah, I believe it. Like, it was crazy. I mean, I didn't experience it, but like she was sending me pictures. I'm like, that's insane. Like, you drive 20 minutes and there's like, you go from a couple inches to a couple feet in a matter of 30 minutes. Like, that's crazy. Crazy. Well, what's up, Billy? How you doing, man? Great, glad.
Billy's probably doing pretty good. His team won. His team's in the national championship.
Yeah, he should be doing great. That's right. His team's in the natty.
JT Thompson, he says they made a 2-foot tall snowman in ATL. Yeah, I saw some wild pictures.
Yeah, like Atlanta got more snow than we got.
Like,
yeah, I saw some
people in Atlanta, like these, I don't know what you call them, but they're kind of like 4-wheelers. I think they're kind of like sand buggies or something, but they were like tearing things up, ATVs down there. And it's like, yeah, it's been wild. It's been wild. But Justice, what does the Swarm need to know? Our news and notes.
Well, we don't have a lot this week. Coaching stuff is kind of calming down a little bit, but we do have some stuff. Coastal Carolina hires Jeremiah Johnson as its new defensive coordinator. Johnson was the defensive coordinator at Louisiana Tech previously, and they were ranked number 1 in Conference USA for total defense this past season. Sam Houston is supposedly hiring Freddie Autry-Lindsey as their defensive coordinator. Lindsey was the co-defensive coordinator and Nichols/safeties coach at NC State. Georgia State offensive coordinator Jim Chaney will be moving to an analyst position within Georgia State due to some personal reasons. And Georgia State has promoted Hugh Jackson as its offensive coordinator. Jackson, formerly of the NFL, was an offensive analyst at Georgia State this past season. Temple hires Tyler Walker as its next OC, offensive coordinator. Walker was the offensive coordinator and QB's coach at Montana State this season, which led the FCS in scoring at 42.1 points per game. Tulsa hires Josh Reardon as its defensive coordinator. Reardon was the defensive coordinator at East Tennessee State with head coach Trey Lamb, so they all kind of moved over to Tulsa. And at East Tennessee State, they had the number one total defense in the Southern Conference this past year. Northern Illinois is expected to hire Rob Harley as its defensive coordinator. Harley was the Arkansas State defensive coordinator for the last 4 seasons. Speaking of Northern Illinois, they made it official last Tuesday. They are now members, football-only members of the Mountain West. And speaking of some potential more moves ahead, we've talked about it before, but Texas State to the Pac-12, those rumors seem to be kind of catching up again, or catching fire again, or some more smoke there.
It hasn't been the first time. This is like, hey,
yeah,
happened a while ago, and then it happened again, and now it's happening again. I think, there's got to be some fire to that smoke.
Yeah. If that happens, I think the interesting thing will be what Conference USA does. I mean, not Conference USA, the Sun Belt does to backfill that spot. My natural inclination is they're going to go to Conference USA and take somebody. But I don't know. I mean, like some of the obvious folks you would think, like Louisiana Tech, maybe. Well, Texas State's in the West, so if they're only going to take one team, it's got to be a team in the, it kind of fits there. I mean, I could see maybe a Western Kentucky. The problem with Louisiana Tech, Western Kentucky, I think, is those folks were in the Sun Belt previously, and I think they burned some bridges possibly when they left the Sun Belt for Conference USA a while back. So it'd be real interesting. I mean, some other schools maybe they wanted to stay in Texas, maybe Sam Houston, Jacksonville State would certainly fit the geography of the Sun Belt West. I don't think they would want to bring someone up from the FCS. I mean, I guess that's possible, but I don't think that's what they would want to do. I mean, I would think if you weren't considering previous bad blood, I would think Louisiana Tech would be the choice, but I don't know. I don't know the history and how much bad blood there really is between like Louisiana Tech or Western Kentucky. And
maybe they'd bring up, like what is it, like SF Austin or whatever that purple.
You're thinking of Tarleton State.
Charleston. Like maybe they bring in like something, a Texas school that is, like you said, a lower level that could.
I don't think the Sun Belt. Like I said, I don't think that would be the Sun Belt's first choice, is to bring the team up from the FCS. I mean, they did it with James Madison, but I don't know that they'd want to do that at this point. But I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. I guess we'll find out if Texas State does end up going. We will find out what that is.
Honestly, like I feel like from a financial move, if you're in the FCS and come up, like I feel like it's one of those things that you want. You don't want like the spur of the moment thing. You want to kind of plan it with like your scholarships of like, hey, I don't want to burn this guy's red shirt. I don't want to do this. Like,
and you gotta have the $5 million entrance fee now too. So
it's like all these kind of things. I feel like you would want to kind of like make this plan for that. It's hard to, and you could see this team, whatever team it is, assuming Texas State leaves, that comes in and it's just like kind of like who had things ready, like who was available, who had the $5 million, who was able to do this thing quick. Something, like a quick trip abroad. Like if you don't have your passport, you ain't going. Like, hey, who's got their passport? Okay, raise your hands. Okay, we're gonna go with you.
Yeah.
So
be interesting to see what happens. JT asks, what's the payroll for a G5 team? I would say on average somewhere around $1 million. Now when I give you that million figure, that is all their whole NIL package. So that's basketball, football, whatever. Some may be on maybe closer to 2 million, but I feel like most are around that 1 million mark. The exception is Memphis. They have that FedEx money, and I think it's like $5 million a year that FedEx gives them, just FedEx alone. But they're certainly the aberration. They're not the norm for the G5. I would say most schools, their NIL is probably, I don't know, 1.5 million. But that's everything. That's football, basketball, women's basketball, baseball, whatever they're going to spend it on. Obviously, the assumption is the majority of that goes to football. But yeah, I would say most G5 schools are around there. I mean, I know that we know that backup quarterbacks at the Power 4 level are making, $400,000, $500,000 a year. And I would venture to say that most G5s, I'd probably say all G5s, with the exception of probably Memphis, they don't have a single player making that much money. Would be my my guess. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't really know what a QB is making at the G5 level. I mean, I don't know, $100,000. I'm assuming in most cases they're the highest paid player on the team. But I do feel confident in saying that a P4 backup quarterback, for the most part, makes more money than a G5 starter does. Again, Memphis is probably the only exception to that rule.
there's maybe a chance that we have a chance to talk with some people within collectives who know other people in collectives that can give us like a roundabout number for a general of like, hey, this is maybe, so we can figure some of that stuff too in a future episode or so. JT, the one thing that I remember from our Worker Bee series last year that's just kind of interesting because it seems to like buck the trend compared to everything else. Do you remember when we were doing Eastern Michigan and they had some sort of stat of like there has been an Olympian track and field participant like every single year since like 1960 or something like that? Like I think it's been like 19 track and field between men and women who've been at Eastern Michigan. I assume that, and I like when you talk about like football getting the majority, like I feel like that would be the one program that's like has this oddball of track and field who probably brings in a lot of money there. So a little nugget just because I remember that from our Worker Bee series and it was super interesting.
Yeah, he says a punter got offered $50K from the SOCOM. Assuming it's from a P4, I would believe that. I mean, that's kind of I've heard that number for like a kicker going to the P4. So yeah, the P4 has a lot of money. G5 doesn't have that money. And it's only the gap's only going to get worse with the revenue sharing. I've heard two numbers kind of thrown around in terms of what the revenue sharing is, but it's either 20.5 or 22 million a year. Those are the two numbers I've heard. So somewhere in that range. I mean, and that's what every school is allowed to spend up to that amount. You're not going to see a G5 spend that amount. They don't have that amount. you will see that the P4 spend that amount. So yeah, I mean there's a big gap, and with this revenue sharing coming up, I believe it starts July 1st. You're seeing these kind of crazy numbers, because now they have a lot more money to spend than they ever did. So you're seeing some, I don't know, crazy numbers out there for kickers, punters, backup quarterbacks, etc. For the Power 4 schools. As Luke was alluding to earlier, Hawaii, they will begin spring practice on February 3rd. They are always traditionally the first team to start spring practice. They start in February, end in February, and they were our first. Their beat reporter was our first interview last year. I guess it must have been in March. For some reason, I always want to think it was in January or February, but it had to be in March because they didn't finish spring practice until the end of February. So it must have been probably like the first week of March, something like that. We did that. We did that interview. So yeah, spring practice starting up for Hawaii. I think next. I haven't seen a schedule yet, but based on what happened last year, next is Liberty, and then maybe either Air Force or App State. Those seem to be the first four from a G5 perspective. Obviously, you get into April, you have all of them are in April, right? The vast majority of them are in April. So, a couple of things in the news this week that I wanted to spend some time talking about it. And the first was this proposal by the Power 4 conferences to kind of take over NCAA championships. It was an article written by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports, and it's a proposal from SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and the Big 12 to potentially remake the NCAA governance and championship structure. Obviously, shifting more authority to those four leagues over rulemaking, policy decision, and even postseason events. They want an expansion of their previously existing autonomous legislative powers, not only for rulemaking and policy decision making, but for NCAA championships as well, controlling concepts like tournament format, revenue distribution, and selection committee process.
Wow. Wow. Just, it will become the Power 2 at some point. It's just how much of a roadblocks and hurdles will there be in that process. If they get this, I don't know, it just seems like it's sooner rather than later, because obviously you got the ACC and the Big 12, and we'll see what happens with all that the court cases there with Florida State and whatnot, and just assume the ACC gets to be a part of probably more so the Big 10, and then the Big 12's trying to figure out what they're going to do, and I don't know, it's frustrating. It
is frustrating, but I guess at the end of the day, maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm like a whipped puppy at this point, but maybe there should be a split, because the revenue sharing and all that, it's going to be a huge. I mean, there's already a big gap. The gap's only going to get bigger with revenue sharing. It just is, because like we just said, no G5 or most G5s are not paying their starting quarterback $400,000-$500,000 a year. The P4s are paying that to a backup quarterback. And so,
you even got Darian Mensah, third string quarterback, makes pun intended, makes waves, becomes the QB1 for Tulane. Then he's off to Duke for $4.5 million.
Well, it's $8 million, I think, over 2 years.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, I mean,
4 years.
The G5 can't compete with that. What I think what you'll see happen is, guys like we saw this year, and we'll talk about in a minute, but guys are going to go to the G5 ball out, and then they're gonna go to the Power Four and get their money. That's just the way it's going to be.
We've seen some schools kind of, and we've heard it in talking with other people around the G5 of they're changing their recruiting tactics. It used to be to get players at the G5. It was like, hey, look at our facilities. Our facilities are up to date. They're this like that's how we're gonna get people is this and that. So now we're some of that's on a more level playing field, or some people they decided to not put in like a new like UTS or UTSA. They wanted to build this new indoor facility, and then they're like, with all of the whole NIL stuff, they're like, well, let's put a pause on that and put more towards the money aspect of an NIL, so we can try to get players here, because that's what they want over a nice air conditioned, nice field indoor facility. I've already lost where I was rambling there.
I mean, this proposal, I don't think it. I personally don't see it getting approved, right? I just don't see it. I mean, JT's talking about the NCAA, and NCAA is like they all you gotta do is sue them. They lose every lawsuit there is. They don't really have much control anymore. It doesn't seem like.
That's where I'm rambling too. Is like some of those teams are starting to transfer like what they get people hooked on, and it's like, hey, we've had X amount of players go to the P4, or we've had X amount of players go to the Big Ten or the SEC, or we've even heard of some that's like, hey, we've had X amount of people go to Alabama. Whatever that is that they can use as leverage of, hey, come. They've embraced
Absolutely.
that one and done, and it's like, hey, come here, we'll do this, we'll get we understand what's going on, and we're going to lean into it. And I think those teams are kind of ahead of the curve in a sense, because that's ultimately, as a college athlete, you want to do what's best for you. And
really, the only power the NCAA has anymore is the basketball tournament, March Madness. That's it. Like I don't think they'd want to go with this proposal either, right? Because if this proposal gives the Power Four schools more control over that tournament, then what is the NCAA around for, right? They don't have anything to do with the college football playoffs. It's the cash cow for the NCAA is the March Madness basketball tournament. So yeah, I mean, I can't see all the other the G5s, all the mid majors, etc. Voting for this proposal. But it shouldn't be a shock, right? I mean, obviously, they want more control, they want more power. That's nothing new. And to your point, Luke, I think, at least in football anyway, I think we at some point we'll see a split of I think I've always said the Big Ten, the SEC kind of doing their own thing. At some point, I really do think that'll happen, but probably not until the lawsuits with the grant of rights and the ACC is decided.
I do want to mention something. Talk about the NCAA basketball tournament. I know we are a football podcast, but I do want to bring this up for our listeners because it's a little nugget, and I'm here in Iowa, and it's just something kind of interesting right now. But Drake basketball, they play like the University of St. Louis, and they're in the Ohio Valley Conference. Team to watch when it comes to March Madness. They have a head coach, Ben McCollum, who took over the team, and he came from Northwest Missouri State, and he brought in several players from Northwest Missouri State, and they are hot right now. I have to look up what their record is, but just a interesting nugget. They're 14-2 right now, so just FYI when it comes to March Madness. Keep a look out for the Drake Bulldogs. Okay, that's it. That's my basketball update.
Speaking about transfer portal, there was a lot of stuff last week. We're not going to talk about players in particular, but just some things we saw last week that I wanted to mention. So first off, there was ESPN article that Max Olson wrote. Talked about over 2,000 players entered the portal this cycle. That's almost a 30% increase as compared to last year, and more than 260 G5 to P4 transfers, which is almost a 40% increase over last season. The Freshman of the Year in the AAC, the Conference USA, MAC, Mountain West, Sun Belt, and even the Pac-12 all entered the portal. Again, no surprise. The G5 teams with the most players lost in the portal, Marshall was number 1 with 35, Coastal Carolina second with 34, and then New Mexico and Charlotte each lost 33. And 3 of those 4 lost their head coach. Coastal Carolina is the only one that did not lose a head coach. A lot of the Marshall guys have followed down to Southern Miss with Coach Huff. And then, New Mexico guys have kind of scattered around. You see some at Utah, some Utah State, and I couldn't really tell you where the Charlotte guys have gone to. But this kind of leads into something we saw from a friend of ours, a friend of the program, covers Arkansas State. I believe she's on, I don't know if it's ESPN radio. It's definitely sports radio. I know that. But Kara Ritchie down in Jonesboro, she tweeted some stuff out last week talking specifically about the Sun Belt because of Arkansas State. But the Sun Belt All-Conference first team, every player but one has either transferred or is out of eligibility. When I looked through her list, it looked to be around 16 or so that have transferred. The only guy that is staying put in the Sun Belt is James Madison offensive lineman Pat McMurtry. And he would have been out of eligibility. He got a year back because of that new JUCO ruling. So he's the only guy on the all Sun Belt first team that is returning to their school. And then she goes on to say, following 2023, there are 26 Sun Belt players that moved to the Power 4. Of those 26, only 2 saw their snap count increase, and then only another 4 saw their snap count decrease by 10% or less. And so that's 6 guys, 6 out of 26, that played roughly the same as what they played in the G5. Not good odds. But it's also important to know, of those 6, 4 of those were JMU guys that followed their head coach, Kurt Cignetti, to Indiana. So, we talk about this a lot. There's, a lot of guys transfer up and they don't see increased playing time. But they generally do see increased money, especially nowadays. So that's kind of what these guys are faced with is what do I want? Do I want playing time, or do I want more money? That's kind of that's the question you're faced, and you can't really blame them for either decision, right? Because some of the making NFL is not realistic for everybody, and so they're probably not going to
in something other than sports,
right? And so, if they can go up to Oklahoma and make $400,000 as the backup quarterback, all for it, right? Because they're likely not to make that money up. They're not going to make that amount of money playing football for sure, and probably not in doing something for a couple months. So you can't really blame them when they take the money.
I mean, I played college baseball, and I was a pitcher. But if I were a catcher, you can just go be a bullpen catcher, knowing, because that's a legitimate job. You can go there and you can. I have a buddy who went and he worked for the Twins, you're never going to go into a game. You're just hired to catch bullpens. Like, that's it. And you just travel with the team. They pay for everything. You are pretty much just like a player, but, you know, you get paid. I don't know how much it is. Not like great money, but you get to go and experience everything as a major league player does, and get to go to see all the games and know you're never going to go in there. You just got to catch a couple bullpens here and there. Like, wouldn't be too bad.
But one thing, like, you know, that I've heard, you know, other folks when responding to Kara and her comment about all these Sunbelt, you know, players, first team players all leaving. I heard an interesting comment from athletic director last week. I'm not going to say their name, but they said, well, maybe we as a G5 shouldn't produce an all conference team, or maybe we shouldn't give out awards, postseason awards, because the Power Four are just using this as a shopping list. That was his take on it. And I got to tell you, that's a bad take, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with the sense in, like, it's a shopping list, but reward the players for their contributions and, you know, what they've done, and get those accolades. I mean,
and I think at the end of the day, like, by the time those all conference lists are released at the end of December, the P4 knows who these guys are. They're not waiting for you to produce an all conference first team to go out there and offer a bunch of money.
They're going to know who Mike Green is. Like, if Mike Green was doing, did all this as a sophomore, like, they're going to know who Mike Green is, especially like Ohio State, or, you know, these teams that, like, hey, our offense usually does this, and there was a wrecker on the defense. I want that guy on my team.
Yeah, they know who these players are. Your all conference list is not quote a shopping list. But Luke and I have had this conversation before too, right? When we started doing our 2020 players, and thinking, man, like, you know, because we have a lot of D1 coaches that follow our Twitter account, our X account, and we're like, man, I wonder if they're using this stuff as a shopping list when we produce, like, who the top linebackers are, who the top D tackles are, who the top cornerbacks are on a weekly basis starting week 1, right? But at the end of the day, like, you know, the guys deserve the recognition, and the P4, the coaches, those teams, they're going to find these guys, regardless of, you know, if they get awards or get promoted or not. It's gonna happen, right? I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
We here at the G55, player friendly here at the G55. You know,
absolutely.
Go get your money. Go do what's best for you. If that is,
you got to enjoy them while you have them. You know.
Yep. Absolutely.
The other thing I heard, and then this is a totally different subject, but this athletic director that I was talking about, like I say, he's a G5 athletic director. He was kind of echoing some thoughts about the college football playoffs, saying that he didn't necessarily think he thought the top 4 ranked teams should get the bye and not the conference winners. And again, like, I think that's dumb. For a myriad of reasons, probably the 2 biggest reasons. Number one, like, first of all, he shouldn't be saying that as a G5, because I can guarantee you, if it's not set up like that, G5 will never get the bye. Never, ever, 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 ever. Not going to happen, right? But to me, the bigger problem is if you get rid of, you know, non-conference champions getting the bye, then let's say, I don't know, look at whoever the number 2 team is. Let's say Georgia's ranked 2 and they got to play number 3 Alabama. Why would they play each other? Because whoever loses is probably not going to get the bye. So, yeah, we don't want to play the conference championship game because it's going to cost us a bye. I mean, that's what would happen.
You couldn't really galaxy brain this. I don't remember if we talked about it on this show or not, but it's like, oh, you could just, like, forfeit a game and it goes down in the record books as a 1-0 win or a 1-0 loss. It's like, well, we didn't play the game. We only lost by 1 point.
Yeah, I mean, I just like, I understand the argument for it, but I just think like you just can't do it because it kills the conference championships. But I don't know. That's a discussion for another day. But yeah, like Billy said, maybe the G5 should have a separate playoffs. I mean, we were big proponents of the idea of the G5 kind of staying with the current situation where they get a bid into the playoffs, and then having the other 4 conference winners play each other in a bowl game. So like kind of like a playoff, but not really, but stayed within the bowl structure. And we had that this year. We did.
Right.
We had Army playing against Marshall, the Sun Belt champion, against the American champion. And then Marshall lost too many players and couldn't play. We had Jacksonville State, the Conference USA champion, play the MAC champion in Ohio. And yeah, so, I mean, I hope that's – I don't know if those things were intentional or not, but I hope to see him continue moving forward. Until it gets to that point where, like, it's obvious they're not going to give the G5 a seat at the table, which I think is going to happen at some point. And then at that point, you kind of do your own thing. But other proponents say, do your own thing now, get out in front of it. And there's some valid reasons for doing that too. I don't know. I don't know that the G5 has the leadership as a whole to kind of do that. I don't know that they'd be getting out in front of it. I think they'd be more reactionary rather than kind of preparing in advance for it. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe if this P4 proposal to give them more power goes through, I think that's exactly what will happen. And it won't be because the G5 chose it. It'll be because it was chosen for them. So we'll see.
All right. Before we get to our next segment, we got about 100 people watching us live on X, and we got people watching us on YouTube. Again, hit that like and subscribe button, and give us a follow, like, and a retweet. But let's get into the nectar, the good stuff. The G5 Hive All Mid-American Conference, or MAC team. We've got offense. Quarterback Parker Navarro, Ohio. Running back Alj Henderson, Buffalo. Running back Terrion Stewart, Bowling Green. Wide receiver Juwan Newton, Toledo. Wide receiver Coleman Owen, Ohio. Wide receiver Adrian Norton, Akron. Tight end Harold Fannin Jr., Bowling Green. Offensive tackle Jack Sherwin, Western Michigan. Offensive tackle Tyrone Tayo, Ball State. Offensive guard Addison West, Western Michigan. Offensive guard Mickey Revolinski, Eastern Michigan. Center Jacob Gideon, Western Michigan, and kicker Dom Jobin, Miami.
I was trying to think like of players that we might have debated for the MAC, and the only ones I can come to is maybe some of the other receivers, like a Javon Tracy at Miami. I think that's really the only other position, or the only position on the offensive side where we had some thoughts about in terms of who should be on our all MAC team. One thing's interesting is the kicker, right? Miami lost their kicker Graham Nicholson to Alabama late in sometime in August, right? I feel like. And they turn around and replace them with another all-conference kicker. So Maybe Miami, Ohio has something going there with special teams and with the kickers.
Yeah. The only other player that we were kind of debating on was that wide receiver position and Tracy there at Miami of Ohio, right?
Yep.
So pretty cut and dry, I think, from the offensive standpoint.
Yeah, and they have, Parker Navarro's returning, Al-Jay Henderson's returning, Coleman Owen graduates, Harold Fannin Jr. is off to the NFL. I believe Adrian Norton is in the portal. I don't think he has declared. A lot of those offensive linemen, though, the ones that aren't out of eligibility, they've all kind of been picked up in the portal. But yeah, I mean, Parker Navarro, Al-Jay Henderson are returning. Those are two big stars to keep in the MAC. All right, let's move over to the defensive side of things. We have edge Bradley Weaver, Ohio, defensive tackle Skylar Gill Howard, Northern Illinois, defensive tackle Devontae O'Malley, Northern Illinois, edge Brian Ugwu, Miami, linebacker Sean Dolak, Buffalo, linebacker Red Murdoch, Buffalo, linebacker Matt Salopek, Miami, safety Max and Hook, Toledo, safety David Carter Jr., Eastern Michigan, cornerback Jordan Oladokin, Bowling Green, cornerback Rayon Strader, Miami, and punter Avery Book, Akron. I don't know. I mean, I think maybe a little bit of linebacker. I mean, Dolak and Murdoch were unquestioned. I think it was that third pick, that Matt Salopek.
Yep, Salopek.
And there was, I'm trying to think of the guy's name. I want to say he was at Akron. We ended up going to the portal too. His name escapes me. But linebacker, I think, was probably the one where we had some debate in terms of who should make the All MAC team. Unlike the offense, most of these guys are gone, either out of eligibility or they've left in the portal. But Red Murdoch is, I don't think he can enter now. I think the Buffalo's it's been past their way past their 5 days since their bowl game. So I'm assuming Red Murdoch will be back at Buffalo next year. So that's big for them, right? They do lose Sean Dolak, who had a year of eligibility left, but announced that he will be going off to the NFL. So did Jordan Oladokin, the cornerback there for Bowling Green. Rayon Strader, a great cornerback for Miami. He was a freshman All-American last year, All-Conference guy this year, and he's moved up to the P4. But
I think the other name that I can't remember the other name that we were talking about, but just amazing what Northern Illinois was able to do on the defensive side. Have 2 D tackles. Obviously, both of them from Northern Illinois make our team. It was like, can we have 2 Northern Illinois? Because there was 3 people that were deserving. I was like, I don't know. They were like atop of the Havoc rate and all year. Like we got to go with them. Sometimes you can just have a couple studs on a team, and that defensive line there at Northern Illinois is pretty good.
Yeah, the Northern Illinois defensive line was good. The 2 D tackles, the defensive ends at Ohio, with Bradley Weaver and Marcel Walker Burgess. We ended up going with Brian Ugwu as our other choice, but yeah, there were a lot of great choices along the D line, and linebackers. Linebacker, the Bash Brothers, Buffalo, 2 of the top 2 tacklers, I believe, in all of college football, both on the same team. That was a pretty remarkable feat. You don't see that very often.
Something that we talked about it at the end of each conference this last week. If you're looking at the MAC, looking ahead for 2025, who are your early favorites?
Ohio. Yeah, I got to put Ohio up there. They've lost some in the portal, but they haven't lost a lot. I think I would put Ohio. I would have said Buffalo,
Yeah, if
but
they could.
but they lost. They lost quarterback C.J. Agbana. I guess. I mean, he can still return, I assume, to Buffalo, but he entered the transfer portal. Otherwise, I would have had them up there.
Rumors are around him that it's possibly go to back up at Florida or back up, not even be a backup, but back up to a backup. But just another quarterback in the room at Georgia is kind of what I'm seeing out there.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. They did get Taquan Robertson, formerly of Penn State, and I think most recently Kansas State. I don't know. Never really been super impressed with him wherever he's been, but maybe dropping down to the G5 is what he needs.
As long as you can hand the ball off to Alj, I mean, that's what you need to do.
I mean, Miami, right? I mean, so Ohio's number one for me. And then I think it's either Toledo or Miami. And the reason why I put Miami up there is they're getting DeQuan Finn come play quarterback for them. DeQuan Finn was at Toledo. Was a great player at Toledo. Left Toledo, went to Baylor. I think he actually won the job. Then he got hurt, and then he lost the job at Baylor. So he's coming back to the MAC to play for Miami. So that'd be really interesting when Miami and Toledo play each other.
Yeah, I want to know that. Like, hey, were their bridges burnt? Because then you go back to Ohio, and then you're with the other Ohio team, and how much was on. There's a lot of interesting things to that story. I'm sure.
Yeah, but I think for me it'd probably be Ohio, and then I don't know, Miami, Toledo. I don't know. And Buffalo, depending, Buffalo returns a lot, but the quarterback, not having a quarterback's kind of a big deal. Billy said he didn't understand why you'd go to be a third string at Georgia and start at Buffalo. The answer to that's pretty simple: dollars. Money would be the reason why you would do that for sure. You're not doing it for playing time, but people make odd decisions all the time, and so we saw the Charlotte quarterback Deshaun Purdy went to Florida, and then he turned around and says, "Well, I'm not going to Florida now. I didn't go there to be a backup. I don't know in what world he thought he was gonna start over DJ Lagway, but
probably didn't know until he got there. He's like, oh, this guy's different."
And you see it with freshmen too, right? You see Jaron Callaway Sakapulotele commit to Oregon, flip to Oregon, enroll at Oregon, and then realize, hey man, like I'm not going to be the starter, and then bounce as a true freshman, bounce to California. So yeah, stuff happens.
Right. Getting into our G5 Hive Mid-American Conference MAC Offensive Player of the Year. Offensive wise, we have tight end Harold Fannin Jr., Bowling Green. Harold had 117 receptions on 156 targets for 1,555 yards and 10 touchdowns. He even added 65 yards on the ground on 9 rushing attempts and had a touchdown. His receiving yards were number 1 among FBS tight ends and number 1 overall. His 1,555 receiving yards are number 1 all-time in FBS history by a tight end. His 117 receptions were number 1 among FBS tight ends and number 1 overall. His 117 receptions is number 1 all-time in FBS history by a tight end. His 10 touchdowns were number 1 among tight ends in FBS and number 13 overall. He had 8 games with 100-plus receiving yards, which was number 1 among FBS tight ends, and tied for first overall. He had 2 games with 100-plus receiving yards versus AP top 25 teams. That was number 1 amongst FBS tight ends and tied for 2nd overall. His 873 yards after the catcher, Yak, was number 1 among FBS tight ends and number 1 among all players. He also had 74 first downs, which was number 1 amongst FBS tight ends and number 1 amongst all FBS players. I'm going to say this a couple times in this podcast, but congrats, Harold, on a historic season. Can't often say historic, but there was a lot of history made this year in the G5, and Harold Fannin Jr., definitely one of those names that highlighted everything. Not only was he a great tight end, but you could put all of his stuff as among wide receivers, and he would have blown, the doors. As Michael Jordan would say, the ceiling is the roof.
The ceiling is the roof is the ceiling. The roof is, I think is what he said.
But it was just amazing what he did, and it being at that tight end position where he could have done everything. I can't remember what the number was, but that bowl game, he had like 22 targets and like 17 receptions. Like he just had a great season, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah, can't argue with this, right? Like there was no one else that we would have considered for the MAC Offensive Player of the Year. I mean, the guy had a tight end season for the record books. He was also a unanimous All-American, but both our MAC honorees were unanimous All-Americans. So that should tell you something about the types of seasons they both had. But yeah, Harold Fannin Jr. certainly deserves all the awards and accolades he gets, and we'll be seeing him get drafted here come April. All right, our Mid-American Conference Defensive Player of the Year is none other than linebacker Sean Dolak from Buffalo. Sean had 168 total tackles, 82 solos, 5 pass defenses, 76 stops, 19 tackles for loss, 13 quarterback pressures, 6.5 sacks, 5 interceptions, one of which he returned for a touchdown, and a missed tackle rate of 4.4%. He led all of college football in tackles and stops. He ranked 2nd in solo tackles, 4th in all of college football for interceptions as a linebacker, and 7th in tackles for loss. Quite an impressive season that led to Sean being a unanimous All-American. Congratulations, Sean, on the amazing season. Once again, like
that 4.4% missed tackle rate, he had 168 total tackles. So that means he missed 7.39 tackles.
Crazy. He had a phenomenal season. Again, we didn't consider anyone else. Really, the only other person you could consider would have been his teammate Red Murdoch, who was number 2 in the nation in tackles. But yeah, I mean, Sean had a phenomenal season. I mean, to be 4th in interceptions in all of college football as a linebacker, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I mean, he just all around run support coverage. He just had a phenomenal year. Like I said earlier, he declared for the NFL draft, and it's sometimes it's a long shot to see these kids get drafted from the G5, but Sean, I think he will. Might be late, it might be 6th, 7th round, but I think someone's going to draft Sean, and I think he's going to make a heck of an NFL player. Folks are going to overlook him because of who he played for, but I mean, I thought he's a good linebacker. I think he can play linebacker at the next level. Before we move over to the Mountain West, I wanted to take 1 second to kind of answer JT's question here about who is the richest team in the G5. That's unquestionably Memphis. Like not even close. they kind of dwarf everybody else.
But that's kind of like new. It's new. It hasn't always been, but yeah, that's.
Yeah, I mean they have that FedEx money. That's that. And then they asked later or top 5. I don't. If we're strictly talking NIL, I don't know that anyone else stands out other than Memphis from the group of 5. Well, and to your point, that'd be my next point. Now with the revenue sharing, I think someone else is gonna, kind of stick out, and that's probably going to be Liberty. I don't think Liberty's NIL situation is great, but they have a lot of money and a lot of resources, and now that revenue sharing is part of the game here, I think my gut says that they would be the number 2 next to behind Memphis, and I really don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know anything about anyone else other than those 2 in terms of like if you feel good about it. There's one school that just based on the sheer people they signed last year and then folks they're signing this year, and Luke accuses them of being my favorite team.
Oh,
but, I gotta imagine East Carolina is in a good position from an NIL perspective. They brought in 2 Power 4 quarterbacks last year, brought in some receivers. So just based on like who they brought in over the last 2 years, it wouldn't shock me if they were one of the quote top 5 in the G5. Anyone else? I mean, those are really the ones that stick out in my head. I can't think of anyone stand out to you. Maybe Tulane, but I don't think so. I mean, they spent some money last year too, so maybe they would be in my top 5. I mean, they brought in didn't pan out. They brought in Ty Thompson, Mario Williams. They brought in our Shaz Preston receiver from Bama. So maybe Memphis would be in my top 5.
I'd say Boise State.
Tulane. I'm sorry. Boise State, yeah.
Boise State is more like they're more focused on like reinvesting, not necessarily always in the players, but more so in the facilities. Like they've got this big jumbotron and updating football, so like they'll get money, and they've got a great AD there that's brought in a lot of money in the last couple of years that they could have never dreamed of. But I would say that goes more towards the facilities themselves and the players there like that, or at least the players that they seem to attract. Because I know for a fact Ashton Jeanty got offered a lot more than he was getting at Boise State. But his loyalty there to Boise State kept him there. Overall, I would say,
I would agree. He's probably the top 5.
To change that, they probably could, and they could be maybe up there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw an interview with Dirk Cutter, their OC last week, and I think he said $2 million is what their NIL's at, which I would say is probably in the top 5 of G5. So did we give you 5 yet? For strictly talking NIL, we don't include Liberty, but Memphis, Tulane, East Carolina,
Liberty.
No, Liberty's not NIL, but they don't have NIL.
I meant
Boise State. I'm sorry. Liberty would be in the top 5 if you're. I think when now that revenue sharing is a thing, I think Liberty would be in the top 5. So, yeah. All right, you ready to tackle the Mountain West?
Yes. So the G5 Hive All-American Mountain West Conference team offense, quarterback Devin Dampier, New Mexico, running back Ashton Jeanty, Boise State, running back Marquez Cooper, San Diego State, wide receiver Nick Nash, San Jose State, wide receiver Ricky White III, UNLV, wide receiver Luke Weissong, New Mexico, tight end Matt Lauder, Boise State, Offensive tackle, Cage Casey, Boise State. Offensive tackle, Caden Barnett, Wyoming. Offensive guard, Drew Moss, Colorado State. Offensive guard, Baraka Beckett, New Mexico. Center, Jacob Gardner, Colorado State. Kicker, Caden Chittenden, UNLV. And that wraps it up for the offensive side.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the only position that we had some debate on was wide receiver once again.
It was right.
Like,
I don't know if Ashton Jensen is good enough.
Yeah, I mean, Ashton Jeanty, Marquez Cooper, two of the best running backs in all the G5, much less the Mountain West.
Our big it was wide receiver, and Jalen Royals had a great year, and then misses the last 4 or 5 games of the season with a bum foot. That was kind of like when he was out there, like he was top of the G5 in receiving yards per game, right up there with Nick and Ash, and they were the only ones that were averaging consistently over 100 yards per game. But then the best ability is availability, and Luke Wysong was having a great year too, and he was out there on the field. And I know he got banged up and missed 1 game, but then he got out there and had another game. But he was a big part of that New Mexico Lobos offense.
The just looking down this list, there's only one guy. I mean, from the offensive skill position, they're all gone. Dampier's transferred to Utah. Ashton Jeanty's in the NFL. Cooper, we might see him in the NFL, but he's out of eligibility. Nick Nash, NFL. Ricky White, the third, NFL. Luke Wysong is transferred. Matt, I don't know about Matt Lauder. Yeah, Wysong went to Arizona. I don't know about Matt Loader. I'm not sure. I think he might have eligibility left, and I don't think he's left. And I know for a fact offensive tackle Cage Casey has not left because it was just announced like in the last day or two that he is returning back to Boise State. I do know the kicker Caden Chittenden, UNLV. He is off to USC. So. Again, most of these guys are either transferring out of eligibility, but there's 1 or 2 that will return in 2025. Moving over to the defense, we have edge Ahmad Hassanian, Boise State, defensive tackle Peyton Zadroik, Air Force, defensive tackle Suwani Toa, San Jose State, edge Trey White, San Diego State, linebacker Jackson Woodard, UNLV. Linebacker Jordan Pollard, San Jose State. Linebacker Tuasivi Nomura, Fresno State. Safety Jordan Vincent, Utah State. Safety Jalen Catalon, UNLV. Cornerback DJ Harvey, San Jose State. Cornerback Cam Lockridge, Fresno State. And punter Tyler Pastula from San Diego State. And I don't think this was like pretty unanimous. Like we didn't really have a debate about any of these guys.
Nope. Yeah, this was a pretty straightforward.
I will say it's interesting. Like it almost seems like, we talked about kickers at Miami of Ohio. Punters are a thing at San Diego State. Their last 2 punters are both in the NFL. One for the Chiefs. And I think the other is Jacksonville now. So yeah, they San Diego State is known for their punters, and Tyler Pastula looks to be then the next great punter there at San Diego State.
All right.
Who? So you're always asking me. I'm going to ask you now. Who do you put? How do you see the Mountain West in 2025?
Jeez.
I think everybody knows who number 1 is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be Boise State. UNLV is going to be interesting with the new head coaching change. There's still a lot to figure out there. That'll be an interesting change. I mean, there's a lot of just in general things changing with. You got Utah State
with Bronco.
Yeah. I think San Jose State has a chance to be better, but I like Colorado State. We'll see what that team kind of looks like, but a couple of their transfers that they come in, I really like. Maybe Air Force, they had a down year. Maybe they use that as a building and they're able to start out quick. But I think right now you have to lean favorite-wise to Boise State.
Yeah, I would agree. Boise State is the favorite, and then you got a lot of interesting teams behind them, right? Like I said, Utah State with Bronco Mendenhall, Air Force getting in. They were one of the teams that lost so much from a production standpoint to graduation. So another year of experience for those guys. Got to imagine they're going to be better. Fresno State, a new coaching staff. San Jose State, returns the coaching staff. They'll have to remake that wide receiver room to a certain extent because they lose both Nick Nash and Justin Lockhart. So yeah, I think the field behind Boise is kind of wide open. There's probably 5 teams or so that you can make an argument that they're number 2. I think if you asked me today, I'm probably going to give the edge to Utah State, but UNLV, new coaching staff, they lose a lot. They lose a lot of players to both to the NFL. They've lost some to the portal as well. But yeah, I think if you asked me today, it'd be Boise State number 1, Utah State number 2.
All right, well, let's get on to our G5 Hive Mountain West Conference Offensive Player of the Year. Goes to running back Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. All right, let me take a breath here before we get going here. Ashton had 374 rushing attempts for 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns. He added 23 receptions for 138 yards and 1 touchdown via the air. In the first game of the season against Georgia Southern, he rushed for 267 yards, which broke the Boise State single-game rushing record, which had stood for 46 years, and ran for 6 touchdowns, which tied a Mountain West record for rushing touchdowns in the game. Ashton led the FBS in both yards from scrimmage and rushing yards, as well as both rushing touchdowns and total scoring. He won the Maxwell Award and the Doak Walker Award. He was also runner-up in the Heisman in the closest Heisman race since 2009. Again, congratulations, Ashton, on the historic season. I've had the opportunity to say historic twice, and I feel like I can't understate that. We saw a lot of great performances, individual performances, and team performances in the G5 this year.
Yeah, was there any question who was going to be the Mountain West offensive player of the year? That's right. There really wasn't anyone else to kind of assume that role. And wish he would have won the Heisman. I think he deserved the Heisman. I think everyone in the world but ESPN and Deion Sanders would have voted, thought it was Ashton Jeanty. Obviously, some of the voters didn't, but I think if you'd asked coaches to vote, Ashton would have won. Obviously, I think if you asked the general public, Ashton would have won. He just had a historic season, like I said.
And if you're listening to this, go check out my Twitter page. It's pinned on my X at Probasco. Luke did an interview with Ashton Jeanty as he was a freshman in college. So go check that out.
Yeah, He quite an impressive young man. If you don't know the story, I encourage you to like Luke said, go check out that interview that Luke did with Ashton when he was a freshman coming to Boise State. All right, moving over to our Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year, linebacker Jackson Woodard, UNLV. Jackson had 135 tackles, 69 solos, 17 tackles for loss, 2 fumble recoveries, 12 pass defenses, 4 interceptions, and 3.5 sacks. He had 8 games where he had double-digit tackles with a season high of 14 3 times. He did against Syracuse, Boise State, and San Diego State. Jackson was the leader of a UNL defense that was one of the best defenses in all of G5. And UNLV also had the most G5 over P4 wins this season with 3. And Jackson was a big part of the Rebels' success in 2024. Congrats on the outstanding season, Jackson. Really, the only other name to consider for this would have been Trey White, the edge at San Diego State. Kind of, he had a big season too. I think he ended the year like 4th or 5th in sacks, something like that. But he had an outstanding season. But yeah, I mean, Jackson was just a big part of UNLV's success. And had Boise State not been in the not been in the Mountain West, UNLV very well could have been the G5 representative of the college football playoffs. They had 2 losses to Boise and a loss to Syracuse in overtime. Those were their losses by UNLV. So, they didn't necessarily get the awards and all the recognition like Boise did, but UNLV had an outstanding season this year.
And Woodard was like the heart of that defense, the motor. He was everything. Like he was all over the field this year. Great season. All right, let's get into the G5 All Sun Belt Conference team offense. Quarterback Braylon Braxton Marshall, running back Ahmad Hardy, UL Monroe, running back Ishmael Mahdi, Texas State, friend of the podcast. Wide receiver Jamal Pritchett, South Alabama. Wide receiver Devontae Ross, Troy. Wide receiver Caden Robinson, App State, friend of the podcast. Tight end Terrence Carter, Louisiana. Offensive tackle Alex Harkey, Texas State. Offensive tackle Pat McMurtry. Talked about earlier. Offensive guard Jax Harrington, Louisiana. Offensive guard AJ Gilly, Louisiana. Center Jacob Bayer, Arkansas State. Kicker Kenneth Alman Darez. And at Louisiana, I think our biggest debate here was quarterback.
Yeah.
Who's going to be that quarterback? Braylon Braxton had a good end of the year. You had Woldridge that was playing great for Louisiana, but then got hurt. You had Barnett that had an up and down season. You had Joseph for ODU that had a great end of the season once he took over. But yeah, that was probably our biggest debate on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these guys, and this is our all Sun Belt team, not the conferences. I think the conference did give quarterback to Ben Woldridge. Braylon Braxton returns. He just returns for a different team. So this will be 2 years in a row where the one of the top quarterbacks in the Sun Belt transfers to another Sun Belt team. You saw that last year with Jordan McLeod going from JMU to Texas State, and now we see Braylon Braxton go from Marshall down to Southern Miss. Ahmad Hardy is going to be a big loss. He's off to Missouri, but good for him. We were talking earlier about folks using these kind of things to recruit, and it's exactly what UL Monroe's done. They've told recruits, come here and be the next Ahmad Hardy. And a matter of fact, they just got a recent commitment from a recruit, and that's exactly what that recruit said. I don't remember the young man's name. I believe he's a 3-star running back, but he basically said, hey, I'm going to UL Monroe to be the next Ahmad Hardy, and then I'll take my talents to the Power 4. It's basically what he said. I'm going there for a year. I'm going to show out, and I'm going to, follow in Ahmad Hardy's footsteps. It's literally what the kid said. So, absolutely, they're using, teams are using that to their advantage, and you got to, right. Caden Robinson got another year of eligibility. He's going to join because of the JUCO ruling. He's going to join Joey Aguilar out there at UCLA. So be interested to see how the two of them can do out there and for the Bruins.
I wish Caden all the best with the recovery from the knee injury. Hope everything goes well with that recovery.
Yeah, Pat McMurtry, like we said, is returning to JMU this year. He also got another year of eligibility because of that JUCO ruling as well. All right, let's move over to the defensive side of things. Start off with the edge, Mike Green at Marshall. Defensive tackle, Santana Hopper, Appalachian State. Defensive tackle, Brodarius Lewis, Southern Mississippi. Edge, Eric O'Neill, James Madison. Linebacker, Jaden Yates, Marshall. Linebacker, Marquise Watson, Trent, Georgia Southern. Safety, Tyree Skipper, Louisiana. Safety, Jerron Manning, Old Dominion. Cornerback, Matthew McDoom, Coastal Carolina. Cornerback, Terrence Spence, James Madison. And punter, James Allen, Georgia State. The biggest challenge was safety. The Sun Belt probably had 6 safeties that we could have put on this list. You had Tyree Skipper, Tyrone Lewis Jr. at Louisiana. You had Jacob Thomas at JMU. Jaden Vosen at South Alabama. And then plus the 3 guys there, that's 5 just off the top of my head. Safety was loaded in the Sun Belt. So that was the one position that was probably the hard. That might have been, like, for me, the hardest of any of the ones we did, right? Just because there were so many talented safeties in the Sun Belt, and we could only pick 2. So yeah, that was definitely the hardest. Mike Green off to the NFL. Eric O'Neill's, I believe, off to Rutgers. Jaden Yates he entered the portal and he committed to a Power 4. I just don't remember which one. I know Marquise Watson Trent committed to Nebraska, I believe. So friend of the program, we did an interview with Marquise early in the season during one of their bye weeks. Great kid. So if you're a Nebraska fan and you want to learn more about Marquise Watson Trent, watch our interview with him. We did, I believe it was in September. So yeah, great kid. But yeah, Jerron Manning from Old Dominion off to Mississippi State. So yeah, a lot of these guys had phenomenal seasons, and I've parlayed that into some big time NIL money in the Power 4.
All right. The G5 Hive Sun Belt Conference Offensive Player of the Year goes to running back Ahmad Hardy, Louisiana Monroe. Ahmad rushed for 1,351 yards, 13 touchdowns, and had 72 yards on 8 catches this season. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry and had 1,012 yards after contact, which ranked 7th in college football for running backs. He rushed for over 100 yards in 8 games, with 2 games over 200 yards rushing. His season high was 206 yards rushing versus Marshall. He forced 91 missed tackles, which ranked 3rd in college football for running backs, and was responsible for 63 first downs. Congrats, Ahmad, on the phenomenal season.
Yeah, I think really the only debate with this might have been Jamal Pritchett, right? The wide receiver from South Alabama.
Yep.
But as a true freshman to kind of do what Ahmad Hardy did, I mean, he really carried that team. I mean, that team, they leaned on Ahmad hard. He was going to go as far as he could carry him. Had a phenomenal season as a true freshman, and he ended up getting our nod, and now he's off to play in the SEC. So we'll see how he can do against SEC talent at Missouri. But Missouri has a great history of running back production, and be interested. I think Ahmad can keep it going. So yeah, excited to see what he can do in the SEC. He certainly had a phenomenal freshman year, as well as a year, one of the best offensive players in the Sun Belt this season.
In an alternate universe, this could have been Caden Robinson at App State. Had the touchdowns came, he just had like incredibly bad touchdown luck where like he only had one touchdown in the season. Obviously, gets hurt at the end of the year.
Well, and he got hurt on the touchdown.
On the touchdown, yeah.
That was when he got hurt. Was on that touchdown catch.
So it was just kind of like one of the like he had a great receptions and receiving yards and whatnot, and yeah, it was just lacking the touchdowns. But in an alternate universe, those touchdowns came, and he had a great would have been an elite season, I think.
All right. This should come as no surprise, but our Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, edge Mike Green Marshall. Michael had 84 tackles, 38 solos, 2 pass defenses, 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 23 tackles for loss, 65 pressures, and 17 sacks with a havoc rate of 16.3%. Mike had a big breakout season in 2024. He finished first in sacks, first in stops, first in tackles for loss, second in havoc rate, and in total pressures. And he's being talked about as a potential first-round draft pick in April for the NFL. Just a phenomenal season. Congratulations, Michael Green. Again, no debate like who this was. He was one of the best players, best defensive players in all of college football, much less in just the G5. Yeah, I think he even had a sack against Billy's team, Ohio State, when the two of them played in September. I think Mike Green did get a sack in that game. So yeah, one of the just a nice guy and one of the better players in all of college football.
Absolutely. Now let's get to what everybody wants to hear, and that is the G5 Hive All-American team. Offensive wise, quarterback Devin Dampier, New Mexico. Running back Ashton Genty, Boise State. Running back Mario Anderson Jr., Memphis, friend of the podcast. Wide receiver Nick Nash, San Jose State. Wide receiver Jamal Pritchett, South Alabama. Wide receiver Devontae Ross, Troy. Tight end Harold Fannin Jr., Bowling Green. Offensive tackle Lucas Scott, Army. Offensive tackle Cage Casey, Boise State. Offensive guard Addison West, Western Michigan. Offensive guard Xavier Hills, Memphis. Center Jacob Gardner, Colorado State. Kicker Kenneth Almendarez, Louisiana. Just when they think about like your all-star team, this would be one heck of a team. Absolutely.
And again, I don't know that we had a lot of debate here, really, right? I mean, Kenneth Almendarez was the best placed kicker in all of college football. He won the Lou Groza Award. I don't know. Devin Dampier was lights out at quarterback. Ashton Genty and Mario Anderson Jr., like two of the best running backs in the G5. Mario Anderson Jr., a great guy. We interviewed him. I don't know, was it June, July, somewhere around there?
Yeah.
We did it. We interviewed Mario Anderson Jr. He'll be hopefully getting drafted here in the NFL draft come April. Yeah, I mean, this team right here could do some damage. I'd like to see this team, make the college football playoff. See what kind of damage these guys could do. But yeah, outstanding year for all of them.
Can you imagine like you got like Penn State who has that Katron Allen, Nicholas Singleton backfield, and having Ashton Genty and Mario Anderson back there,
right? And Devin Dampier.
Yeah, and then like, oh, I need to do something quick. Here's Devontae Ross. Here's Pritchett, or like throw it up deep to Nick Nash. Like that, Harold Fant, like,
Harold
oh
Fant.
my God. Jeez, that would be awesome.
It absolutely would. Absolutely would. All right, let's move over to our G5 Hive All-American defense. Edge, Mike Green, Marshall. Defensive tackle, Devontae O'Malley, Northern Illinois. Defensive tackle, Swanee Toai, San Jose State. Edge, Trey White, San Diego State. Linebacker, Sean Dolak, Buffalo. Linebacker, Red Murdoch, Buffalo. Linebacker, Trevion Barnes, Florida International. Safety, Tyree Skipper, Louisiana. Safety, Caleb Weaver, Sam Houston. Cornerback, Za Frazier, UTSA. Cornerback, Jordan Oladokin, Bowling Green. And punter, Tyler Pastula, San Diego State. Once again, I would say safety was the toughest.
Yeah, like you talked about, Jaden Boyson, Max and Hook were a couple options.
Yeah, I mean, it was safety was definitely the hardest, the hardest to kind of just pick two guys. We got two teammates on here, Sean Dolak and Red Murdoch, both linebackers, but they were number 1 and number 2 in college football in tackles. Both had phenomenal seasons, both deserving. Trevion Barnes also also in the transfer portal. I want to say I think Baylor's where he ended up. He had a phenomenal year, especially considering he wasn't even the starting middle linebacker to start the year. That was Reggie Peterson. But yeah, I mean, phenomenal season by all these guys.
All right, the G5 Hive Offensive Player of the Year, none other than running back Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. Again, Ashton had 374 rushing attempts for 2,601 yards and 29 touchdowns. He added those 23 receptions for 138 yards and 1 touchdown via the air. Again, in the first game of the season against Georgia Southern, he rushed for 267 yards, which broke the Boise State single-game rushing record, which had stood for 46 years, and he ran for 6 touchdowns, which tied a Mountain West record for rushing touchdowns in a game. Ashton led the FBS in both yards from scrimmage and rushing yards, as well as both rushing touchdowns and total scoring. He won the Maxwell Award and the Doak Walker Award. He was also runner-up in that Heisman contest, and it was the closest Heisman race since 2009. Congratulations, Ashton, on the historic season.
There was no other choice, right? I mean, like we said earlier, phenomenal year. Should have won the Heisman. All right, our G5 Hive Defensive Player of the Year, none other than Edge, Mike Green, Marshall. He had 84 tackles, 38 solos, 2 pass defenses, 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 23 tackles for loss, 65 pressures, 17 sacks, had a havoc rate of 16.3%. He had a huge breakout season, which saw him finish first in sacks, stops, tackles for loss, second in havoc rate, and total pressures. And he's going to be, drafted come April. Phenomenal year.
I think he's a first-round potential. I think about him. I'm like, man, if he got to be on like the Baltimore Ravens or a team like that, man, that would be
yes. Like the Ravens, I think is a good pick for him, because they run a 3-4 and he can play that kind of outside linebacker edge role for them. I think the Ravens would be a great landing spot for Mike Green. But yeah, phenomenal year. Congrats, Mike, on the outstanding season. And we talked about Mike Green. I looked this up earlier this week. Someone was asking me, July 3rd. We interviewed the guys from the Thundercast pod. We did our preview of the Marshall Thundering Herd, and those guys just waxed poetic. They talked about how big of a season Mike Green was going to have back on July 3rd. And that's the kind of information that you're going to get if you listen to our Worker Bee series, we make when we interview these beat reporters, the folks that know the teams the best. It's not always a beat reporter because a lot of G5s don't have a beat reporter. But one of the questions we ask about is your breakout players, both offensive and defense. And Mike Green was the breakout player for those guys, and boy did he break out. He had a phenomenal season. So just another reason why you want to watch our Worker Bee series, which start once again with Hawaii, probably sometime first part of March after spring practice. Early on, we try and do them right after spring practice, but then we get to the point where there's too many, and then we were doing 3 to 5 interviews a week.
Sometimes it was a lot.
Yeah, and so when we start getting in that hot and heavy, I want to say I guess probably in April timeframe, we don't do our normal live show just because we're so busy doing those interviews. But they lasted from like April all the way until like the first week of August, I want to say.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Because was it 65 teams, I think. We got 2 more this year that they're coming to G5 in Missouri State and Delaware. So that's 67. And we haven't had this discussion yet. Me and Luke haven't had this discussion yet, but it's probably time to include Oregon State and Washington State too, which would bump the number up to 69.
I mean, that would be. I mean, we tried to talk with people there, but they're we're not a G5 school. We're still P4. Is the attitude currently? So we'll see if that tune changes here.
We know we're gonna have at least 2 more. We're at least gonna have have 2 more to add in the Missouri State and Delaware. So yeah, just another reason to listen to us year round. And that's it for tonight.
All right. So heads up for you guys. We're not going to have any live shows for the next 2 weeks. We're still trying to iron out a couple details. Again, we're not going to have a live show next Monday. We figured a lot of people will be tuning into the national championship game. We want to watch it too. So we're going to be watching that national championship game. We're going to hope to maybe have a recording that goes out. I don't know, Justice, that would go out
the 27th.
So it'll go out. Well, it'll be on that Monday of the championship game. There's a chance that we might have something.
Oh, and that'll be the following Monday, the 27th.
Okay. Because we were talking about possibly two things.
Maybe we haven't confirmed the first one. So for sure, we will have a recorded show coming out on the 27th. We'll be talking with someone that runs an NIL collective, and we're going to talk about the impacts of the house settlement, revenue sharing, NIL, and the impacts that the G5 have seen from that. That will be out on, like I said,
Monday
the 27th. We'll put it out we'll probably release it that morning. So it'll be on our YouTube channel. Real quick, JT says how many G5 teams now? There were 65 if you did not include Washington State and Oregon State. This year, we're adding Missouri State and Delaware, who will become part of Conference USA. So that kicks us up to 67. And if you want to include Washington State and Oregon State, which that's what they are G5, it would be 69. That also includes UConn as an independent. UMass was independent, and we've included them. They will be in the MAC next year, so they will be officially a G5. So that's how we get to the 69. You got all the officials, the official G5s, plus if you want to include the Pac-2 and UConn would get you to 69.
Nice. Yeah. Again, no show, live show Monday, January 20th. But come back and join us in 2 weeks, and we'll dive into that NIL and always bring you up to date on the latest news and happening in the world of G5 college football. Again, next 2 shows, no live show. There's going to be at least one recording that will drop Monday, January 27th. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're watching us on X, please give us a retweet, a like, and a follow. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please subscribe and leave those 5-star ratings and reviews. Thank you all for your support. Until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.